I'm told you merely need to hear a dream. You can explain it.
Not me, Your Excellency. The explanation comes from God.
None of my wise men are magicians. None of my gods could help me. What makes you think your god is any different?
Tell me your dream, Pharaoh.
Every night it's the same. I am standing by the Nile. 7 healthy cows graze peacefully on the banks. But then, 7 horrible, sickly cows come from the same river. The most wretched I have ever seen in Egypt. Suddenly they begin to devour the healthy cattle. And yet the cows remain as sickly as before. And then I wake up.
Is there more?
Yes. Another dream always follows. 7 ears of grain, full and golden, grow from a single stalk. Suddenly 7 ears, hardened and scorched, spring up on the same stalk. And swallow the 7 good ears. All that remains are shriveled grains unfit to eat. And nothing else. Well?
Pharaoh's dreams are one. The healthy cows and ears of grain are 7 years of abundance. But the sickly cows and the withered grain mean 7 years of famine will follow and destroy the land. Egypt may not survive.
Can this be stopped? What can be done?
You must find a man you can trust. During the years of plenty, have him collect 1/5 of the grain from every field and store it under guard. Then during the years of famine, give it back to the people.
Potiphar, you trust this man?
With my life, Excellency.
Through this man, I have seen the future of Egypt. And through his deeds, we shall prosper. I am giving him power over all Egypt. Only Pharaoh will be greater. You shall call him Zaphnat-Paneah. The god speaks, and he lives.
What's the craziest dream you've ever had? Maybe you were a superhero flying around and saving people. Maybe you're in a room filled with sweets and chocolate and you can eat as much of it as you'd like. Maybe you're at school and you notice people giving you funny looks. You look down and you realise you're still in your pyjamas. We can have some quite strange dreams, and today we're going to hear about some very unusual dreams. We'll hear more of Joseph's story and how God used him for amazing things and to save lots of people. As we've seen over the last few weeks, there were many people who wanted to cause Joseph harm. His brothers sold him into slavery and Potiphar put him in prison. The king's cupbearer, when he was released from prison, even he forgot about Joseph, but God never forgot about Joseph and used the bad things that happened to him for good. Our story today comes from Genesis chapter 41, and it says in verse 1 that 2 whole years had passed since the cupbearer was released from prison. For 2 whole years the cupbearer had forgotten all about Joseph, and for 2 whole years Joseph was sat in prison, wondering what would happen next. Well, what did happen next? As we saw from the clip, Pharaoh had a couple of dreams which troubled him, and he didn't understand what they meant. None of the magicians or wise men of Egypt could help either. They didn't know what they meant. But all hope was not lost. Finally, the king's cupbearer remembered Joseph, and how what Joseph had said about his and the chief baker's dreams was true, and had happened. Pharaoh didn't need telling twice. He sent for Joseph, and Joseph was brought before him. What a change from being in prison! Joseph was no longer in a dark and dingy cell. He was now standing in front of the most powerful man in Egypt in an amazing palace. In verse 15, it says that Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard it said of you that you can interpret it." How do you think Joseph could have responded to this? He could have thought, great, this is my time to shine. I'm going to go from prisoner to power if I get this right. Or he could have thought, oh no, I can't do this. Pharaoh is the most powerful man in Egypt. If he doesn't like what he hears, I could end up killed like the chief baker. So I'm not going to say anything at all. But Joseph didn't do either of these things. In verse 16, it says that Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Joseph gave God all the credit for helping him interpret dreams. Sometimes God asks us to do things that are hard, like being kind to others or doing what our parents have told us without arguing. But God will always be with us, helping us to do these hard things, just like he was with Joseph, helping him to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And I think you will agree, they are some quite strange dreams. In his dream, Pharaoh was standing on the bank of the Nile River, when suddenly 7 fat, healthy cows came up out of the water. After them came 7 sickly, thin cows that ate up the healthy ones. Pharaoh saw a stalk of wheat with 7 healthy heads of grain on it. Suddenly, 7 shriveled heads of grain sprouted and swallowed up the healthy ones. If you were Joseph, would you be able to interpret these dreams? Well, with God's help, Joseph did interpret Pharaoh's dreams. He explained to Pharaoh that the 7 healthy cows and good heads of wheat meant there would be 7 years of abundance in Egypt, where there would be lots and lots of food. But that the 7 sickly cows and shriveled heads of wheat meant that following the 7 good years, there would be 7 years of famine, where there wouldn't be enough food to eat. Not only did Joseph interpret these dreams correctly, as we'll see in the rest of the chapter, but he also had an idea to save the nation of Egypt. He suggested to Pharaoh that during the 7 good years, when there would be lots and lots of food, that they should save some of it and store it up in different cities all over Egypt. And then, when the 7 years of famine came, they could use some of the food they had saved up to stop people from starving. Pharaoh liked the idea so much that he put Joseph in a high government position. Joseph went from being in prison to being second in power over all of Egypt. This shows us that God was always with Joseph. Even during his suffering, God didn't forget Joseph, even when it seemed like everyone else had. God used what people had planned for evil and brought good things from it. Just like we've seen that God was always with Joseph, God is always with us. Even when it seems like lots of bad things are happening, when we fall out with our friends, when we don't do very well in a test, when we don't get noticed for a prize, or when we've been told off for something that we didn't do. We can remember that God is there, that he loves us and has a plan for each of us, and that plan will overcome all obstacles. Who would have thought that Joseph would go from prisoner to second in command over all of Egypt. As we follow the story of Joseph, we can also think about Jesus. Jesus was born hundreds of years after Joseph, but like Joseph, Jesus was punished even though he didn't do anything wrong. The people who should have cared and loved Jesus betrayed him, and Jesus suffered because other people did bad things. But God used these things as part of his plan to save us, even when it looked like that plan had failed, when Jesus had died on the cross and been buried in a tomb. It wasn't the end. 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead, conquering death and taking the punishment for the bad things that we have done. This means that we can now be friends with God if we trust in him. How amazing is that? There really is no obstacle too hard for God to overcome.